everyone, welcome back to Muffet Field. As you can see here, today I thought I would discuss a little bit about Larry Harris's new game, War Room. I still owe a video on Sireblood's Bloodbath that we attended back in September. Fun weekend. I have some pictures and some thoughts on a video for that, but honestly we haven't even had the Global 40 map set up since we got back because this was waiting for us. You can see my Global 40 maps underneath this one, holding it in place. So when I get a break, I'll set that the BBR map up and go through some of the things we learned from the Bloodbath this year. We were first on the first day. I think we finished last overall because we took some risks on day 2. But again, I'll cover those in the Bloodbath video synopsis that I'll do after we get bored of this a little bit and switch maps. So again, Larry Harris's The War Room. I didn't sponsor this on Kickstarter. I wasn't really planning on buying it. Then I saw it come out, so I just bought it from Nightingale Games. I think it was about $240. And then I bought the expansion kit with the big map and some other things, these little coupes or whatever you want to call them, War Room sticks. I think that was another $100. People may say it's overpriced, like $240, but honestly, I don't think it's that bad. If you go print a Bloodbath map or a Global 40 map at your local print store, it costs $70, $100. So if you think about all the components that are in this game, it's not that bad. It's pretty well done. The components are nice. Honestly, this out-of-box map, I think I prefer it versus the neoprene oversized map that came with the expansion kit. I don't think it's the big maps that necessary. Of course, I'll probably print one later. I don't really like the neoprene. It has the bubbles that everybody was complaining about. I threw it in the dryer and it helped a little bit, but I don't even have a space big enough for it at the moment. So we're sticking with the out-of-box cardboard map, and it's honestly it's fine. So if you didn't order that expansion kit, I wouldn't worry too much about that big neoprene map. The one thing that does come with the kit that will, I think you'll be able to order it online later, are these erasable whiteboards for the troop movements. We're playing with these. They're pretty nice. They're pretty handy. So if I was going to order something from an expansion, it would probably be that. Having said that, I don't know. We haven't played with the paper ones. I'm sure these are fine too, and actually might be better because you don't accidentally erase anything on the whiteboard. It has this handy cheat sheet, and you can keep track of what happened, which you can't do on the whiteboard ones because you erase them every turn. So actually playing on this might be kind of interesting. You could even print these, I'm sure, just print on your printer at home. One thing I want to add here too is that I'm not going to go through a lot of the gameplay because actually Nightingale Games has, I think, about 10 videos on how the game works and how it plays. So if you want to go see the rules and things like that, again, Nightingale has some pretty good videos out there on how the game mechanics work and how it plays. I'll probably touch on it here and there, but go see that for the mechanics. And maybe future videos I'll get into more of how the dice rolling works. These are the dice, the 12-sided dice, and the colors link to the units. So green are tanks, hit tanks, blue hit artillery, things like that. Let me get the camera there. So that's how the dice roll. But again, I'll leave you to go watch those videos instead. I'm just going to talk about our experiences with the games a little bit. Okay? So this board is set up for the global game. We jumped right in. We didn't even play any of the scenarios. We just like to we go big. So we went ahead and started out with the global scenarios. Again, we played about 10 games. The first 4 or 5 were learning games. We were playing some things wrong, and we adjusted those. I think we were playing the convoys wrong. Like we were rolling. If you rolled like 5 yellows, we were playing that you got 5 hits, whereas it's just 1 actually on the convoy. We didn't, it took a couple turns, a couple games to realize we were playing that incorrectly. What else we were playing wrong? I think we were playing the strategic bombing a little incorrectly, because if you bomb a region, you only get to bomb what's on the region. So, you can't bomb France and hit oil because they don't have oil. So you have to bomb the places that have oil if you want to affect oil. We were playing the trading wrong. And actually what I'm doing here, I'm going to connect another video to this of like game 10 that I just took down. So before I took that down, I did a video on that, and that will come after my introduction here. And I'll go over some of the things we've learned and show you what a post-game synopsis looks like. But this is a pre-game. This is set up for the global war. So this will be a 2-part video. The part I'm doing here, showing the game setup and going through some things, and then the post-game summary. What else? Okay, so yeah, we were bombing wrong. I was trading wrong. As the Americans, I was trading 2 oils for like 10 grains and things like that, which was wrong. You can only trade once. I think we were trading on the Axis wrong too, because to trade on the Axis, you have to have a sub in the same region or in the sea region connected to neutral. So to trade with Brazil, the Axis have to have a boat there, ship there. A few things we were playing incorrectly, but I think we've got the rules down now. They're not that complicated. So as you can see here, this is the setup. What's nice about it, you can quickly scan across the board, and because of these stacks, you can quickly ascertain the odds almost just by comparing the stacks and what's in those stacks, whether they're tanks, the green tanks, the blue artillery, or the yellow infantry. The fighters are the round discs, and the ships are these elongated discs. I guess a disc is technically round, but these elongated counters. What else here? The turn, let's see. Let me pause here for a second, read my notes, and then I'll get back. Okay, so I was just looking through my notes. I was saying how the game quality is pretty high. Some people were complaining that these stacks don't always work, but we found them to be pretty good. Maybe they'll loosen up over time. They're not all perfect. Sometimes you pick up and stuff falls off. But in general, they stick together, and we haven't had that much of a problem. And so you grab it from the bottom. It's not that big a deal. Again, the quality's great. Things are pretty clear in terms of which side is what. Of course, I went ahead and printed the actual nationalist Chinese flag that was in play at the time. There's going to be stickers coming out, and I stuck them over the Communist Party officially recognized yellow and red flag that's, I think, fictional, because I guess the communist government won't let Nightingale Games print what they want to print in China, so they control everything. So I said, screw that, and until the stickers come out, I printed them out manually and stuck them on, so that, because I don't believe in that, so. that was the setup and some initial comments on the setup and some of the things we do on the battle board. Here is, as I mentioned, this will be kind of a post-mortem on probably the 10th game that we've played so far. Again, with 2 people playing the global setup. This is probably turn 7. We don't really write the turns on our, like we should, on the round indicator. But this is probably around turn 7. It would be good to start keeping track of that more closely. The first few games have just been rule learning. So this is the aftermath of maybe 6-7 hours of play. I think it maybe takes up to an hour per turn. I'll have to keep closer track of that as well. We've kind of got it down now where we merge some of the steps, like the buy, the deployment. I mean, yeah, the buy, then the next deployment, the cleanup of the airplanes, and the starting of the moving. And we've kind of started to merge some of those steps together just for speed of play, because it doesn't seem to make that much difference. I'm sure it'll make a difference one of these times. So I was the Axis this turn. I think I'll concede my brother's played probably Axis all the other games. And again, more of a learning experience, but here you can see that Germany made it to almost to Moscow, made it into Moscow, and actually almost defeated the Russians, but they held on by 1 infantry, which allowed these American fighters to stay on the space, which means that I'll probably not take Moscow now because of that one, sorry, I hit the camera, because of that 1 infantry surviving. The Italians got there. One of the things I did is because I wasn't sure if Italy would get bombed or knocked out of the game itself. Italy only has 1 factory. So I went ahead and I gave Italy Leningrad, and then they moved on to the Urals, so that if something happened to their Italian factory, they could always build up in Leningrad. But this was just a straight push for Moscow. Pretty much moved everything I had into there. The Italians did make it down into the Middle East. We thought the British were going to knock out that 114, but I was able to bring in the carrier fighter from this Italian carrier to prevent that. Not much happening in Africa this game. This carrier defeated the entire Italian Navy and some planes and just held on for dear life. So it's still there. I brought down some reinforcements, the 109th that I built in Italy to help defend Libya, but maybe I'd probably try to take Egypt this turn if we were still going to continue, but I didn't have the forces there. And honestly, there's not much in Africa to do. There's no victory conditions, so I'm not sure if even concentrating on Africa is a play. I guess you get some easy stress points against Britain, perhaps, if you can take Egypt. But not a lot of resources, not a lot going on. Probably never going to make it to South Africa without massive forces. So I'm starting to think just defend this oil in North Africa and don't bother with Egypt. Having said that, it is the step to 3 oils, but unless you want to come through the Caucasus. So it's probably easier to come through the Caucasus than it is through Egypt. What else here? Of course, the Americans have already landed in Karelia, retaking that. Looks like they're going to take Norway or Finland this turn. Put some extra stress points on Germany. Germany only has 1 stress point, but it doesn't take much to build those up. And if France falls, forget it. That's 6 stress points. That's probably two blocks down up on the tracker, limiting orders, depriving resources. So the U.S. economy, once again, pretty much wins the game, as often happens in Axis and Allies. I do have the Italians ready to move into France, but how long will that last? A turn? And then we have an in-battle space here. One German sub trying to sink a battleship, and these two landing forces that can't land until that's decided. I sent in these fighters last time, the 12th, but I chickened out this time because I didn't want them to get destroyed because the 11th went in there as well. Of course, those bombers will probably bomb Germany's infrastructure, blow out the rail, and there's more on the way, as you can see. One thing about the Axis, you have to keep a ship next to the neutrals if you want to trade with them. So I've been able to keep this submarine force here in A12 to keep the oil supply open. Japan seems to end up with a lot of oil, and with only one trade per turn. We were playing that incorrectly at the beginning. As the Americans, I was trading like 2 or 3 oil per turn, but upon reread of the directions, it looks like you can only trade once per turn. But the Japanese end up with, seems like, a lot of resources and one factory, a factory in Japan and a small factory in Manchuria. Like Axis and Allies, Japan needs more factories. You can't build more factories in this game. You're stuck with what you're given on the map. So I think as the Axis, it's important to keep the neutral supply chain open for as long as possible so Japan can trade away some of those unnecessary or unused resources. Like we said, America keeps building. Like to keep these things handy, these little whatever territory markers, so we just keep them on the board in the home country. One thing that seems to happen in terms of the turn order, at the beginning of the game you bid to go first, and I'd say later in the game you bid to go last, so that you don't sacrifice your army or fleet if the enemy happens to move there first, and that's not what you wanted. So yeah, it seems like at the beginning of the game, turn order is important, so that you can go first, and then at the end of the end of the game, turn order last. Seems to be where we're going with it. Here's a fleet heading to Japan, and then here's the Japanese situation. I left it totally unprotected because I had to get troops to China, and I was trying to take India as well. So of course there's a massive American fleet there. There's no war between Russia and Japan as of yet, so the Americans can't go through Russia. They can land there, but they can't attack from it. I can build 8 units. It might be enough to hold Japan. Probably not. Although I would have force advantage because they only have yellow and blues. I would probably build a tank so that I would get force advantage. If I hold 1 turn, that would have been enough because I could build 8 more again that turn. And again, the Japanese have probably more than enough resources to build 16. There's the second factory that Japan has in Beijing, Piping. It's only 2 though. So I think instead of moving the fleet down here like I did, and one of the reasons was to keep Arabia open also because I have to have a fleet there. I could send a small fleet down there. But I thought I'd try to go for India. And I was going to get close, but then the building started. And I didn't want to bomb the factory because as Japan, I wanted to keep the factory intact and the infrastructure intact. So I couldn't really bomb the factory to stop them from building because I wanted that factory later. Unlike Axis and Allies, you cannot rebuild infrastructure or factories either. And I think the Chinese are pretty much done. Probably no big secret that it's pretty handy to send bombers against single stacks of infantry because they can't even hit airplanes. So that's what I was doing there. I was bombing the ground units without any repercussion. The Chinese are relatively a pain to take out, like in Axis and Allies at times. They just keep pushing west. And so far, the Chinese have not moved out of China, but that is not a restriction from what we understand from the rules. Like, unlike Axis and Allies, they can only move to Burma and Hong Kong. I think the Chinese can move anywhere in this game. I've come down and taken Indochina, for instance, with the Chinese. So that's kind of the Pacific setup. Not much happened down here. Again, you have the oil islands, which are important to keep, but it takes the Americans or the British a while to get over here. And this unit actually started here, so the islands are protected to begin with. Australia, a little bit of a play. It'd be a Japanese factory if they can get it. The Solomons start in battle at the beginning of the game, as you saw in the setup. So that's about turn 9 or turn 7, 6, 7 of a 6-7 hour game, and probably the farthest the Germans have gotten in terms of advancing. Should have had Moscow, but couldn't quite get it. If I had one more plane, and I remember the roll, I missed, all my planes missed. So just a slight variation on the roll would have secured Moscow and kept those American fighters out. Let me see, I think that about, oh yeah, in terms of victory points, it seems like this is going to be a Russia, a Moscow, UK game, because the Axis have to take 2, right? They have to take Washington, UK, or Moscow. And Washington just doesn't seem like it would ever come into play unless some weird situation happens where the Germans are able to get across the Atlantic, or the Japanese across the Pacific. But by then you'd probably quit the game anyway, because it would be apparent that that's going to happen. So a little concern, I think, that this game might get a little stale with just those 2 victory points. Again, it'll just be a push for Russia. You might try an early Sea Lion while it's pretty much undefended, but there's that British Navy here. I don't know, we haven't tried that. That hasn't come up yet in 10 games or so. But you never know. So that's kind of one concern, is how to keep the game fresh, I think. The secret moves will help keep it fresh, because there'll always be errors, especially if you get 5 people playing this game. There's going to be errors in the movement all the time, unless you spend hours on each turn. But if you keep a time limit, people are going to write the wrong things, they're going to talk about the wrong space, someone's going to forget. So that will lead to some interesting games and some variations, is the secret movement. But in terms of the victory points, that might get a little stale, because it happens in Global 42. It's the same formulaic approach, game after game, it seems. War of attrition rather than something interesting. That's why Blood Path rules are great, because it provides for other victory conditions and keeps the game fresh. Right, so Washington unlikely, Africa no victory points. It's kind of like a why bother. Would be interested to hear some thoughts on those 2 propositions. That will that happen? The strategic bombing for infrastructure, if you want to blow out the British rail, that seems like a pretty good idea. Or if there's units under construction, if you can blast those with strategic bombing, that's pretty good. That's happened a few times. But then the Germans just build a little farther inland where the bombers can't get them. And for bombing the resources, so-so. It's not that impactful unless you can bomb an oil resource, which there aren't many of over here probably. I guess Germany, you could bomb Germany, but it's usually protected with fighters. So what are you going to bomb? You're going to get one resource, one oil if you're lucky. It's not, strategic bombing doesn't seem that great, except if you catch some units that are being built in the space. Oh, one tip we do, like let's say this unit was being built. There's that factory, you're supposed to put this factory icon on top to show that unit's under construction. What we prefer to do is just flip the stack over. And that's how we indicate unit under construction. It's easier, this thing's not going to fall off, and it's just clear. You see immediately a bright yellow or bright blue or something like that. Works for the ships too. We flip those over, that's under construction. And looks like a good target for strategic bombing. What else? The battle board, right. One thing we do on the battle board is if there's two factions, let's put them over here. Let's say the Germans and the Italians. Oh, well, this is the naval board. Let's flip it to the ground board. So let's say you had Italian or German and Italian, and maybe the rules even say this, I don't know, but just to keep them straight, when they get killed, just mark them so you know where to put them up above on the casualty list. It just helps keep things organized. Okay, let's see. Flip over the buys. Oh, we also mark the collapses. Things move up the scale. We mark the previous detriments to the stress. Just, when you look at it, you should see like, oh right, I need to remember the 3 movement, and I need to remember that I lose 3 resources. So we mark those as well. It's easier to see where things are. I think that's about it in terms of what I have to say about our game so far here. And all right, so as we play more, I'll try to get more videos up on War Room and see how it goes. Let's see if it becomes formulaic, if it's just the push for Russia, because as always, if Russia's not taken out, they become too strong. They have a lot of factories. They also have a factory out there next to Japan. Okay, that's it. Till the next video. Take care. Okay, I guess I'm not done yet. I just want to do a little conclusion to the story here and say that should you go out and buy this? Should you spend $240 on this game or more? And I would say if you're an Axis and Allies player or a heavy war gamer with chits and blocks, maybe like the GMT games, this is somewhere in the middle. It's kind of a hybrid of that with some other unique aspects to it, like the hidden movement, which makes the game deeper, I would say, than like Axis and Allies, because there's a lot of thinking that goes into those moves. $240 is a lot of money, but you get a lot of game. As I pointed out before, the map is great. These plastic counters, the units are great. These trackers, by the way, these are holders as well, so there's pieces under there. It's all well put together. The movement booklets are high quality. If you get the expansion, these boards are all good. This card system's fantastic. So it's a pretty epic game in that sense. I think you get value for your money. And again, if you like Axis and Allies, you'll probably like this. It doesn't have the little army men, as General Hand Grenade likes to say. And believe me, I like my army men, and I like to paint them. This is not exactly that type of game, and I don't think this game will lend well to being house ruled. It's already pretty well thought out in terms of the gameplay, and it has unique steps that you have to go through that I don't think will blend well with house rules necessarily. Curious to see what happens. Again, this game's right out of the box, so will there be some house rules? Probably, maybe some modifications to overpowered units, like the fighters, if they truly are overpowered. As there's some conversations on Board Game Geek saying that the fighters are too powerful. maybe some production house rules. I don't think R&D or technology is going to play well in this game. It just doesn't, it's too strategic. So I don't think you really want to modify the individual units that much. I don't think people will be adding units, maybe a destroyer or something, but unless you have a 3D printer, how are you going to do this? Theoretically, I guess you could play with Axis and Allies units on the board, but I don't think that's going to work that well, because what makes the game pretty great, as I said before, I think, is that you can scan across the board and see just with these stacks what's sitting there. It's kind of like the discs in Axis and Allies, I guess. If you use discs, you know, you can look across and see the stacks of discs. So it probably has that feel to it. Okay, but back to buying it. Yeah, if you've got $250, go out and buy it. Maybe wait 6 months. Maybe you'll find some used copies on eBay, or maybe if they print it in larger quantities, maybe there'll be a price reduction. So I guess that's my take. It's epic. It's high quality. Try it. Go out and buy it. Try it. Wait 6 months. Buy it cheaper. Or I guess you could even, if the map file comes out, you could get the map printed, play with Axis and Allies units, make your own movement sheets. I guess the cards would be a problem. Probably by the time you do all that, you could just buy it. But maybe there's some possibilities to make a homemade version. I don't know. All right, so that's my take. You know, it took Axis and Allies how many years to get to like Bloodbath rules? 20 years or more? So this is just the beginning. Let's see what happens. Take care.